Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Circle Back Podcast, the show where two great friends get together, talk about video games for about an hour or so. As always, I'm Dan LaMarca, and I'm joined by Dan Dufrenoy.
Hello.
And Dan, I want to kick it off today by just saying, what have you been playing?
One game that I've been kind of dabbling in. I kind of missed it when it came out. Kind of flew under the radar for me. Prey came out earlier this year. Sci-fi exploration kind of game.
Yeah, Prey is a fantastic game.
Yeah, definitely really good.
It comes from that lineage of like BioShock and Deus Ex, and I think we're gonna have some things to say about it come Game of the Year time.
No, definitely. Sure. I love it. I'm not too far into it, but that's because I've been really enjoying the world, exploring every nook and cranny.
Yeah, the fun of that game for me, for sure, is the exploration and the little side stories throughout. The overarching story has some interesting parts. I think the opening is super strong. I think it kind of falls off. We'll talk more when Game of the Year comes.
We got more to go. But I gotta say, my first impressions, about 5 to 10 hours in,
You're a big fan?
I like it. I really, really enjoy it. Cool. I really do.
Too much combat, though, right?
Those phantoms are tough, man.
I just think it has way too much of an emphasis on combat.
Those phantoms are tough.
But anyway, we'll save that.
It took me 7 hours to find the glue gun. And I know it was one of the first things. You
get that in a half hour normally.
I have all these glue canisters. Where's what? Yeah. So I went all the way back and I found it, but so it was the game was a little tough.
Yeah, I think so.
At first,
All right, I think a game that we've also both been playing is Super Mario Odyssey.
Oh man, definitely.
A pretty fantastic Mario game.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I definitely. Maybe it's too early to say, but I would say it's one of the best Mario games, top tier, definitely. I
think you might be right. Maybe we'll settle that out another time.
All right, let's see. I hope so.
But yeah, Odyssey is fantastic. It's one of those games where the whole time you're playing, it's just it smiles on your face.
Yeah.
It's
man,
so much fun. A lot of cool little surprises in that game. And you know what I love about it, honestly? They talk so much about the hat throwing mechanic and turning it to stuff. And that's really just a puzzle-solving thing. It's not a huge gameplay thing.
No.
I was afraid that it was going to be it's going to rely on this gimmick. And
but how many times is it just so cool? Certain characters that you turn into.
When you can turn into certain things, you're like, wait a second, can I? And you throw your hat at it.
And you can turn into,
No fucking way. Yeah, that game's awesome. Some of the best music in a Mario game.
One of my favorite is The Forgotten Isle. Oh, my man.
The Forgotten Isle? Which one is that?
I don't want to have to sing in front of everyone. That's
you don't have to sing it. I mean, describe the location.
That's the one where your ship gets spoiler. Bowser crashes your ship, and it's very swampy, very Donkey Kong-ish.
I don't know what you're talking about. Give me some more things in that level that I can identify.
All right, so there's one where there's
what's the boss?
There's a moon. Actually, there's no boss. There's a moon and a cage. You can turn, those the wigglers that you can.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the one with the purple stuff.
Yeah. And you can turn into the wiggler kind of things, and you can stretch
out
over areas.
That's the first time that I was able to become the thing that flies.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right, I remember that one.
That's just one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, that one definitely slid on my radar.
That was so good. I loved it. I spent a lot of time on that one.
The best one to me is the Steam Gardens, the one. With the cool one too, God, that music!
Oh my gosh, so good!
It's got some freaking surf rock. That game,
man,
that game
beautiful.
is something else.
Beautiful.
And one of the best post-credits things.
Oh, definitely.
That I've ever seen in games.
Oh man, play that game, beat the game.
Won't spoil that yet. Maybe we'll talk about it sometime soon.
Definitely. Play the game.
Another game that I've been playing is a game that came out earlier this year, NieR Automata. This game, me and you started together, actually, and then I started to really like it, and I was like, Dan, we can't play this for an hour a week because I'm going to need to talk about this for Game of the Year. And you're like,
a little old me.
I understand. No. Get kicked to the curb. No, but NieR, how do I describe NieR? NieR is kind of like an action game in the vein of a Bayonetta, Devil May Cry. It's by Platinum, but the thing about it is it's not focused on combos and stuff. It doesn't even have a combo meter or anything, but it has the, heavy, light, heavy, different combos. And you're this robot, this android that is sent to Earth, and Earth has been overrun by it looks like no humans have lived there in a long time. It's like all grassy and overrun. It's got cool like dilapidated skyscrapers that have like trees growing through them. It's like really, I like the aesthetic a lot. Reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, definitely.
But so you're this android, you get sent to Earth basically to wipe out all the machines, they call them. And the machines are basically simple robots. That's the idea of them, is like they're like very simple. You know, you as androids are going, you're with your sidekick, you and this guy are basically saying, oh, these machines, they don't know anything, like, you know, let's kill them. And then they start saying things, like they'll say like, no, please don't hurt me, you know, like robots. And your character is like, why are they acting like this? And your sidekick 9S is like, oh, they're just mimicking human behavior, you know, they don't know what they're saying, they're just saying things. And so the whole time you're thinking like, oh, geez.
Am I doing the right thing? Yeah, am I doing the right thing? It's very Blade Runner. It's just like, is this the right thing to do?
It has a lot of good
moral implications.
A lot of good stuff. And I will say, so big shtick to this game is that you do multiple playthroughs. And so I'm on my third playthrough right now. The whole idea of the game is you beat it. You get some like good story beats along the way, but the first playthrough is not that interesting. It has interesting elements, but it's not like the main draw. Then you play through the second playthrough as a different character. And you start learning more about the world and what happened to the humans, and then you start your third playthrough and like everything is thrown in the air, and it's like the storytelling in this game is really, really good, and it's one of the few games that the story is unique to playing it, and I can't really I'll spoil that more in our Game of the Year talks, but right now I can't really say too much because I don't want to ruin it. But a lot of games is like, you say to yourself, hey, this is a great story, it didn't have to be a game. You know, like I could have watched a movie. Like, you know, a lot of people say that about smaller indie games and stuff like that. Like, gameplay wasn't. This is like, I'm not saying it because the gameplay is fun. I'm saying it because there are things that you do in the game that bring you into the story physically by holding a controller. It's really, really interesting, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Dude, cool,
either way, it's going to end up being pretty high on my list.
Like I said, when I played of it, I absolutely enjoyed it.
It's very cool, and we'll touch more on that.
Awesome, man.
Later in the year. Let's talk about the big game that you and I both finished recently.
Very excited.
Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus.
Oh man.
So I'm gonna let you start. Talk about this game because I played it. I pretty much beat it in like 3 days after it came out.
It was super quick.
I loved it. Yeah. So let's hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, so I played the original Wolfenstein, Wolfenstein 3D. Loved it. It was one of the games from my childhood. I didn't play the New Order. I missed out on the New Order. Didn't play it. But I took your advice. You know, read up on the New Order, just kind of get the backstory. This game, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, is really, really good. In the beginning of the game, they sort of skim through all the events of the second game of the New Order, kind of fill you in on what you might have missed, and you're just put into it. First-person shooter, but there's just so much to it. I absolutely loved it. You're BJ Blazkowicz, the guy from all the games, and you're pretty much an action hero, killing Nazis. And
well, yeah, the whole shtick of this game is that you are this action hero killing Nazis, but you start out in a very vulnerable state.
Right.
You know, I played the New Order, and where it leaves off, it basically directly picks up in the new one, like literally directly after. And the events that happen in the first hour of this game. So it's not a spoiler to say you wake up as BJ in a wheelchair.
Yeah, you're in a wheelchair, right? Yeah.
So you're this like famous tough guy that, you know, kicks ass, and now you're like totally emasculated. You can't even walk on your own. Like it's like it's really well done.
And every right, your health just completely keeps going down.
Yeah, well, you have the thing that's cool, and it's like kind of silly, but I really like it. In the New Order, your max health was 100. in the new Colossus, you start out, your max health is 50.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like, it's kind of silly, but it's like, they're kind of trying to tell you in the actual gameplay, like on your HUD, like,
not in a good place.
He's not himself. He's not fully up to what he should be.
Right.
So we're not going to spoil any of the specific story beats right now. Maybe we'll do a spoiler cast or something, or we'll just touch on it in Game of the Year. But what I do want to talk about is the way that this game handles its different tones, right? So Wolfenstein, to give you the baseline of the new Colossus, it's like a pretty straightforward machine games game where it's, you can dual wield guns, you're like all out shooting Nazis, like you're just running through.
Yeah.
But you know, if you don't know anything about the newer Wolfenstein games, it's basically flashes forward after the New Order and the Nazis have taken over.
Right, it's
America.
1961. The Nazis won World War II.
Yeah, and they're occupying the United States.
Yeah.
So you get, you know, that itself lends us to some really interesting scenarios where you can, you know, the one of the more interesting ones early on is when you go to Roswell and it's like this Americana, like Main Street.
Freaking scary, and there's Ku Klux Klan members just on the street. Yeah, exactly. It's terrifying.
Because of course they would be the ones that would be welcoming Nazi rule. Like there's a lot of, and again, I don't want to get too much into it specifically.
Right.
But I do want to say, it handles comedy and serious moments. So it goes back and forth between being really funny, like it has some of the more like laugh out loud. Like, honestly, there's one scene in particular that we're not going to spoil here, and it was I purposefully was dying over and over again to have BJ redo the. Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
If anybody that knows it, you'll know what I'm saying when I say. You get to choose certain dialogue options, right? Mm-hmm. I'll say that.
I know exactly where. Yep.
And I kept
towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and I kept doing it on purpose because I'm like, that is fucking hilarious. Like I think the voice acting in this game is superb.
Man. Yeah.
And he really delivers those lines perfectly.
Oh man.
But yeah, basically it goes from being a comedy to an action movie to like an actual dark comedy where it's
right, and it's got serious implications and
but
serious.
What I think it does well is it takes the like you always run into the fear of like we're either going to make Nazis look way too competent, and then therefore we're like heightening them and saying like, wow, these people were great, they're admirable because they're so smart and they're so good, you know. Or you say, hey, we're going to take Nazis and make them look like a bunch of buffoons because fuck Nazis. You know, like we don't want... This game does the good thing of like, sometimes you're laughing at them and other times you're terrified of them. You know, Frau Engel, the main villain.
She's terrifying.
But there are certain scenes where she's doing things that are so, like right in the beginning of this game, she's doing things that are so like...
Yeah, atrocious and just evil.
Yeah, like evil, but in a way that it's almost like it's psychotic. You know what I mean?
What's sick about it is the enjoyment that she gets.
She
out
loves
of.
it.
She loves
pure
blood,
violence.
and she loves.
But like, not like violence in the way that an action movie would be like, oh, that guy just got his head blown off, and you never see him again. It's like they linger on
she likes
vicious
torture.
things.
Yeah, exactly.
And she revels in it, loves it.
Yeah.
So. And then it has things like drug sequences with this guy who are hilarious. Or there's just so many moments in this game that, and I think it's paced really well. I think it goes from quiet, like really endearing moments to horrific moments where like people that you care about die.
No, exactly.
To hilarious moments like I'm talking about. So it's like the fact, I don't know if I've ever played a game that can carry that many tones well, because most movies can't carry that many tones well, you know what I mean? But in games, I feel like we oftentimes we talk about like, you know, the great stories in games, right? But a lot of those stories are very one note, even if they're great stories. Like you may like the story that's laid out and the characters are well written, but I don't think I've ever seen a game that succeeds on switching between tones as deftly as they do. I think this is like a superb example of storytelling.
Exactly. There's moments where, especially I found where BJ, where he goes, spoilers, where he goes back to his hometown and he's having flashbacks of his childhood and his childhood friend, and then his mom, who he loves and misses, and his dad, who's just evil and is a racist asshole.
Yeah.
And it's just how he grew up, and we talked about this at the beginning. Through most of the game, his health is failing, and it's just him sort of contemplating, okay, well, is this it? Kind of. There's just a lot going on. There's just
early on, he basically says, "I don't have long to live."
Yeah.
I guess not a spoiler, but I don't have long to live. So his outlook on life is like, what,
it's kind of all or nothing kind of.
Yeah. But again, this is a good jumping off point for what I want to talk about, which is like stories and games in general. As far as Wolfenstein's concerned, we got to talk about whether we're going to do a specific spoiler cast for it, or if you just want to touch on all this in Game of the Year. I might want to do a full episode on it, because I think there's so many moments that we could dissect.
I think Wolfenstein, excellent game.
All right, so what I want to basically say is I want to throw out The Last of Us, right? The Last of Us, I personally identify as one of my favorite games of all time.
Amen.
Right?
Definitely.
It's incredible. The storytelling in that game is great. But what I say when I talk about Wolfenstein, it seems hyperbolic for me to be like, this is one of the best stories in games. I mean that not in like the content in the story. Like, I'm not talking about the plot. I'm talking about the way that it can shift tones and earn it. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that are absolutely ridiculous that could never happen, and yet somehow you're like, I love it. I'm buying into this, because they write such a well-written story. So that's why if you put the story of The Last of Us next to the story of Wolfenstein, you're going to say The Last of Us is way better, because you're reading the plot of it and you're saying, this is a great story. I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, certain things that happen, in The Last of Us, which is a 4-year-old game, so I'm going to spoil it. That moment when Joel falls on the spike.
Oh man, yeah.
And then it flashes forward to winter.
Right.
And Ellie's
on
herself,
her own, yeah.
And you think Joel's dead. And so the plot points are there. The story is incredible.
The Last of Us I would see as a movie. The Last of Us, I feel like if they were going to take a video game and make it into it's pretty much a movie.
But I could see that for Wolfenstein too. But what I'm getting at especially is what The Last of Us has one tone, and it nails it. And it's about the story itself, not the storytelling and the ability of you know what I mean? Like, the story itself is excellent, but the way that it's executed, I feel like Wolfenstein is head and shoulders above most of these games that we hold as like the great stories in games, because it can do so many different things well. And you see other games try this. Like, we talk about Mass Effect, the series that we really love, where they have great characters, they have a good overarching story, but it's like when they try to do certain things, not everything works.
Yeah.
The scope of it is huge, so it's forgivable. But certain side quests fall flat. The romance scenes fall flat. You know what I mean, though? It does not nail everything it does. And something that does nail everything it does is The Last of Us, but it only does one thing. Wolfenstein does a lot of different things, and it nails every bit of it, everything about it. I don't know how you feel about it. That's how I feel about it. Because I don't want to. It sounds like I'm like saying Wolfenstein is the greatest game of all time, and I'm not. But I'm so impressed with the way it tells its story, and I want to know what you think.
No, I think I definitely agree with that. There are moments in Wolfenstein, because I know you love Doom that just came out last year, and there are moments in Wolfenstein where it's very much, you can just imagine, Rambo breaking into a place and just killing everything inside. And there are those sort of moments where it's just very over the top action, and there are moments where like you're close to tears, where it's just like, oh my goodness, like.
But it plays with your expectations of that. There's one scene in particular that I'm not going to spoil where it totally messes with you, and it makes you feel like, yeah, I am the badass that can break free and kill all these people.
Right.
And then it's like, but then it's like, No, you're not.
You're not. Yeah.
You're a person.
Oh man, we gotta do a spoiler cast.
Yeah,
we're
gonna
all
do
these
it.
things.
But what I basically want to end on is there are things in Wolfenstein, gameplay-wise and mechanics-wise, that frustrate the hell out of me.
I started the game on like a medium.
I played the game on normal the whole time.
Yeah, normal. Yeah, what was it? Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I played it on that the entire time, and I regretted it. I really did, because the gameplay. I think I told you before. If it had the shooting and the gameplay of Doom, 2016 Doom, is it 2016 or 2015?
2016 came out last year.
If it had the gameplay of 2016 Doom, this might be one of my favorite games of all time, because it is that good of a story. But how many times have I went into like an encounter with a small amount of health and it autosaves, and I'm just frustrated over and over and over again because the shooting is not as good. The indicators of where you're getting shot from are terrible.
Yeah.
Your health meter declining there's no indication.
And that's the thing; it does that all the time anyway. But
I'm saying you have no idea. You're getting shot, and the numbers are just going down. It's not like the screen's blinking red. There's an arrow point, and I get it. It's going for the old school aesthetic, the old school mechanics. I'm fine with it for the most part, but some of that is unforgivable. Where you have to pick up the armor by hand a lot of times. You try to walk over it and it doesn't work. You have to look down. So I'm getting shot at. I have to look at the ground to pick up a helmet to get armor. It's like, it's so close to being like this masterpiece that I absolutely adore. But I think the gameplay does not detract from the story, because we both come out super positive on it.
Yeah.
And I don't have enough good things to say about the story.
I have not seen a game handle a subject matter like that.
Yeah.
As well as
and so getting back to now that we'll still talk about Wolfenstein, but I want to talk about it in the context of more about like stories and games in general. There are games that do handle stories particularly well, and I think the few that I want to talk about is Firewatch and Gone Home in this specific context, because those are two stories that also touch on different tones in games, and they handle them pretty well. You know, Firewatch does the thing where sometimes you think it's a horror game. The dialogue between these characters really fleshes out the world. The way it opens with you figuring out what happened to your wife. You know, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And that does a good job of saying, hey, we're tackling some serious topics, and we're also being goofy and a little silly sometimes, because that's what real life is, you know? Like, it really...
There's a scope.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a spectrum in everyday conversation that real human beings have. You're not talking about... When we're talking about The Last of Us, you never see Joel and Ellie being like... but not only that, it's like... Or like doing just dumb shit, because they're like, oh, we're a real serious game. And I don't want to shit on the game. I love the game. But that's where these games separate themselves. And I think that's why I'm seeing like Firewatch and Gone Home are like trying to push this medium forward, and Wolfenstein grabbed it and was like, I know what you're trying to do, and I'm going to bring it even. They even went further with it, where they have some scenes that are hilarious, and it just really encompasses all these different things. Whereas what I'm talking about with The Last of Us, I think another good example of a Last of Us style thing is Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons.
Another fantastic game,
Yeah, it's a great game, but it, again, is very one note.
So your argument would be like games like Last of Us and Brothers, one-dimensional, whereas Wolfenstein, Gone Home, Firewatch have been able to...
Yeah, and what I've said before is, when you're talking about the actual through line of the game, the plot of the game, I wouldn't argue that The Last of Us isn't the best one out of all the ones we're talking about, because it is. But it's these other games like Firewatch, Wolfenstein, Gone Home, they're ushering in and saying, we can tell adult stories that are complex. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's not... Because Brothers and Last of Us, they'll make you cry. They're really good stories. But they're great, and they're really interesting. But it's almost like they're a little like exploitative of your emotions, you know what I mean? Where like...
Feel sad.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Whereas these games that I'm talking about, like Firewatch and Wolfenstein, it's like, you might feel differently than somebody else about it. Like when you're talking about the overall tone of the game, two people might get totally different perspectives of it because they have that many different tones that are well done.
Well, that's so funny that you say that, especially with Firewatch. I was just talking to a buddy of mine about his favorite game of the years, because we've been talking about favorite game of the years, and he was talking about last year how he loved Firewatch, and how Firewatch for him was actually, for him, the emotion that he felt was like tense. Like he felt tense the entire time being in the woods by yourself, and I never thought of it that way. Yeah. I always thought, like, oh man, it's like a beautiful world, and there's just, human things going on, and oh man, all these like things, but at the end of the day, it was like a very serene sort of experience. It's like, no man, like that entire game, I was on edge, and I was just like, I never thought of it that way, I never...
Yeah, well, I think to bring Gone Home and Firewatch into it, I'm not just saying that they are tackling multiple tones because they're both fake horror games, you know what I mean? They're both like surprisingly not horror games. Yeah. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying like in Gone Home, for example, when you're exploring the house, you're finding some stuff out about your mom who's flirting with this guy at work, and she might have feelings for him, and he invited her, they went to a concert together. Like, you're finding all these real human issues, and also you're finding your sister's, like, zines about, like, with, like, cassette tapes, where you're hearing, like, this punk rock music, where it's like you're kind of just like jamming out, like, right, oh man, like there's any SNES cartridges, like how cool is this? You know what I mean? And it's because that spectrum is reality. You know what I mean? Like you're actually trying to bring in a realism of how the world works. A game that I'm going to talk about that I know you haven't played yet is A Night in the Woods.
I've not played that yet. That is on my list for this year before
this is out. In this conversation that we're having right now, A Night in the Woods is the perfect example. And I know you won't have much to say about it. I'll just talk briefly about it. In what I'm saying, where it has comedic moments and it has grave moments, basically A Night in the Woods deals with mental health issues, but it deals with them with a group of teenagers. Maybe not, I think they're maybe 20 or something like that, 19. It deals with a group of them and how they would talk to their friends about their issues. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that I love to see in games, and that's what Wolfenstein succeeds with. Because, without spoiling too much, in A Night in the Woods, you're playing as a character that came home from college and you don't really know why. Like, she dropped out, you don't get... But you get the idea of the way that her parents are like talking to her. Hey, are you doing all right?
Yeah.
You have a sense that something happened, but your friends will be like talking about some dumb stuff, and then be like, "No, but really, are you okay?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's like what a real interaction would be like.
It's very realistic in that sense, and that's the multiple tones that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You never get the basically the dichotomy between friends being stupid together and friends being genuinely concerned about each other in a lot of games. And I think Wolfenstein has that at its heart. It's doing a lot with its story, you know what I mean? And that's where I think it does really, really well.
I think for me first, when it comes to games, for me it's always story first, and that's why I think why I could take or leave the gameplay, I could take or leave the shooting, whatever. But for me, it was, when's the next cutscene? When's the next, story point? And that's what kept me trudging along.
But that game, especially Wolfenstein, is, like I said before, it can be a real slog to play.
And it can be. I mean, there's moments where even I had to switch, just to get past the point, I had to put the difficulty down just because there's so many guys in these huge mech suits that I can't get past.
There's one especially egregious moment late where there's two giant really tough guys at the very end.
It took me like so many tries just to get past them.
And you were on the easiest difficulty.
Yeah. And it was
I'm telling you,
terrible.
This game, it's not well balanced, and there's issues with it. I'll be really interested to see where it falls on our Game of the Year list, because I'm super high on the story and super low on the gameplay. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on. Another topic that I had been thinking about lately is, as we're going into Game of the Year time, I recall really, and this is like when did Destiny 2 come out? A couple months ago?
Yeah.
I really loved playing Destiny 2. And once I was done with it, I never thought about it again. And I actively consider that game, where does that stand on my games of the year? It's not even close.
Really?
And I wanted to kind of dive into why that is, psychologically, like why.
All right.
I just don't know. If I played a game for 80 hours with my friends and I loved it.
Yeah, you'd think, hey man, that's gotta be top 10.
But I don't really give a shit about it.
Okay.
And it's weird. So what I'm getting at with this is, how do we decide? It's basically like enjoyment versus criticism, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if I really love a game while I'm playing it, why wouldn't that game be super high on my list? You know what I mean? Like, because what I always think about is, when you're talking about movies, right? You're talking about movies that I enjoyed this year. I loved Spider-Man Homecoming, and I loved Thor Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. Those are my big action movies that I love.
Right. Are your summer blockbusters? Or?
And at the end of the year, when Oscar season comes around, neither of them are going to be nominated at all.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I expect that. Because there are also Oscar, relevant movies that I also really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I think Blade Runner could be up there.
Love that movie.
But there is a distinction between, like, you can enjoy a movie just as much. You can enjoy an action movie just as much as you enjoy a serious movie, and one of them, for some reason, you're just like, hey, that movie is one of the great movies, even though
right, and you can kind of might have pushed it
because you're criticizing it. You're looking at it and you're like, at least I am. Some people out there, they watch a movie and they're like, hey, that's my favorite movie of the year, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But we're talking about that specific aspect of, like, criticism, because when I watch a movie, I will criticize it. I can't help it. I think about the dialogue and if it's realistic or not. I think about the actual direction, the camera angles, the cinematography. Like, I think about all these things, the acting performances, and I take that into consideration on what, when I'm talking about what I think were the best movies or games.
Or would you enjoy?
But
I think there's a difference.
But it doesn't. When I'm making those kind of lists, I don't care what I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about what the best one that I've seen, because I get an enjoyment from the criticism.
All right, yeah.
As much as I do from just sitting there and smiling and saying, this movie's awesome, I love this big set piece. So, I don't know, maybe I'm pretentious, but...
No, but I feel the same way. So, if, like, I saw Spider-Man and I thought it was good, I enjoyed it. But then again, I loved Get Out, and Get Out made me think, and Get Out made me... And I would say that Get Out was a better movie, because
no doubt about
Get Out was a movie where once it's over, you talk about, Spider-Man,
watching the movie,
it's cool.
But watching the
movie...
Maybe
that makes us pretentious, though, I don't know.
I'm watching Spider-Man, and I'm like, I'm really enjoying this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it much after.
Yeah.
It's the same idea when I'm talking about Destiny 2. I enjoyed it while I was playing it, and then I didn't really think about it much after. And so that's obviously a reflection on me as a person, as I like to ruminate on some deeper ideas sometimes. But when video games are unique because they're an active experience rather than a passive experience, like watching a movie, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're playing a video game, you need to be enjoying the act of playing it, right?
Right.
So this is where we talk about gameplay versus the story. So if I'm playing a game like Wolfenstein and I don't like playing it, but I love the story, then I'm at an impasse, because I'm like, how am I going to say that this is one of my favorite games of the year when I really didn't enjoy playing it? That's where I'm getting at with this topic, is like, is it because video games have so many different ways of enjoying them? Is that what it is? Because there's a game like Mario. Yeah, Super Mario Odyssey will be way up there on my list. That's purely because of the gameplay.
Yeah. And that's quite a conundrum, because I don't think it's as absolute. Maybe we think that it's absolute, but I guess it really isn't, I don't know.
I think it goes case by case, obviously. But when we're talking about the overall landscape of... Like, when we're looking at all these different websites, your GameSpot, IGN,
right.
Giant Bomb, all these guys, they're making top 10 lists at the end of the year. Best games of the year.
Destiny will probably be on those lists.
Destiny 2 will be on some of those lists. but it won't be on all the lists.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking at, that's why I'm trying to break it down as video games as a medium in comparison to other mediums, because when you look at the best movies of the year list, if you're looking at real critics, they're going to have very similar lists to each other. Mm-hmm. Whereas video game lists are going to be very different.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I'm trying to ask is, why is it? What is that about video games that makes it so much more subjective?
I don't know. Maybe in a way, video games are there's quite a different scope of video gamers and video game interests. I feel like with a movie, mm-hmm. not that movies follow a specific formula, but there is some sort of formula where everybody walking into that movie shares the experience, shares the tone. Whereas with video games, especially video games nowadays, there's so many different avenues, and video games are so big now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not even just in popularity, but also, I mean, like, the games themselves,
yeah.
You know, like, you know, games huge worlds, huge landscapes, huge characters. There's so much room for differentiation. There's so many different...
Yeah, well, I think what it comes down to is when you're talking about a video game, you could play a game, like we said, Gone Home, mm-hmm. What is it, 2 hours, 3 hours? Or you could play... I'm 35 hours into NieR, you know, so they have wildly different ranges of experience. So that's definitely a factor, I would think. But the other thing is, I think there's more avenues to enjoy a game than there is to enjoy something like a movie or a book, right? Because if I'm playing Assassin's Creed, I don't enjoy that game very much because I don't enjoy the minute-to-minute gameplay. And the story is not interesting enough to me for me to slog through the gameplay like I did with Wolfenstein. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody that enjoys that gameplay, Assassin's Creed's their game of the year because there's so much of it.
Right.
They love this gameplay, they love this world, they're going through it. And so it's like, while you have these different ranges of experience, you also have different ranges of what you come to games for. You know,
right, and everybody has a different sort of.
But what I think is interesting is, I mostly come to games for good stories, mm-hmm. or at the very least, interesting. See, that's where it comes down because Cuphead is one of my favorite games of the year. Mm-hmm. It has a beautiful art style, and there's a lot to love about it. It doesn't have a story.
Right.
I don't come to that game for that.
Dude, the devil came in. They gambled their souls away. It's
listen, King Dice, he's incredible. But that's where I'm saying Destiny 2 falls by the wayside for me. And I can't put my finger on why.
Well, you're more of a story guy.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. Mario Odyssey and Cuphead, I don't care about the stories.
Right.
But they're going to be on my list. What is the distinction? I cannot figure it out. Because is it just that there's not enough interesting stuff to talk about?
Is that what it is? Like, for example, Cuphead and Mario, right? I feel like both even when nothing's going on, everything's very still interesting. The characters are still very interesting. Maybe it's more cartoony, so it's more appealing.
How do I play 80 hours of Destiny?
Yeah, and
not really like
that much.
Like but here's the other question. Destiny is a very social game for me. Mm-hmm. I probably played Destiny for about 5 of those 80 hours by myself.
Okay.
75 hours with my friends.
Maybe that's the reason you like it.
So am I just enjoying it because I'm playing it with friends?
That could be, man. I think for example, my opinion would be a lot of those first-person shooters. Mm-hmm. I find enjoyment in the multiplayer aspect. I wouldn't play Call of Duty on my own. I wouldn't play, right. And I have played Halo on my own, but now if someone wants to play Halo, it would be multiplayer. I wouldn't really pick up those games.
I think Destiny in and of itself is like psychologically produced. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like, you know how they say Coca-Cola is like tweaked by scientists that know how your chemicals in your brain work to make you enjoy it. It's almost like they did that with Destiny, where it's like they're giving you just enough of the treadmill to keep going, and you're having fun with your friends along the way. And so it's like, I will never disparage anybody that Destiny 2 is their favorite game of the year. Because guess what? I played a shitload of it. I loved it. But it leaves a hollow feeling after the fact where, number one, you never want to go back. The new expansion got announced. It's out in like 2 weeks. I'm not going back to it. And then it also just leaves you with, what the hell is there to talk about?
Right.
You know, but here's the thing that and a lot of this isn't me saying, tell me the answers. This is like us just talking about it. But it does not. So you're talking to your friends along the way. So is that why I have no need to talk about it after? Because I come to you, we play single player games,
right? And we
come here and do a podcast and talk about them.
Yeah.
That's our interaction about the games.
But I think that's just who we are and the video games that we enjoy. We want a little bit. Again, this is going to sound super pretentious, and that's not what I want to come across as. But we like, some sort of story, some sort of thing that we can kind of chew on.
I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you for the most part. But you cannot argue with the fact that Cuphead is one of my favorite games of the year, and there's no story there. There's nothing to chew on. That's why I keep coming back to it and saying I don't think so. But I'm trying to sort it out for me, because I should just take it at face value and say I had a great time with Destiny 2. It should be on my list. Mm-hmm. I had a great time. I played it a lot.
What is it about Cuphead then? How about that? What about Cuphead? Is it that
Cuphead just did something I've never seen before with the art style?
Yeah, it could be the novelty. I mean, that art style,
and it has that gameplay
aesthetic of the year, definitely.
Yeah, but it has the gameplay of, it's that old school style gameplay,
like Contra. Like
it's Contra meets Mega Man. That's what it's like, and it's absolutely fantastic. And there's more to talk about because it's so interesting. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
I cannot think of anything that I want to talk about in Destiny.
Yeah. I think part of it could be, I think Destiny, beautiful, beautiful game, and we've talked about this, like, when it comes to first-person shooters, like, the gameplay and the controls are absolutely fantastic.
They're excellent, yeah.
But maybe that's all there is to talk about. Maybe it's just revolutionizing because of
fun to play.
Because of that. Whereas Cuphead, like you said, the characters are interesting. And not to say that the characters in Destiny aren't interesting, but like the characters.
I would say that. I would absolutely say that. They're not interesting.
Then the characters in Cuphead, it's mostly all just boss fights, and like it's just an interesting, unique sort of experience. So maybe the reason we like that is because of the novelty, whereas Destiny isn't as novel anymore. But, and this is just my 2 cents, I could be completely wrong, I don't know. But Cuphead at least was something that anybody that saw Cuphead or anybody that knows about Cuphead can say, never seen that in a game before. That's really, really cool. Mm. If everybody did it, it would lose its speciality. I don't know.
I want to go away from this for 1 second and go back to my movie comparison that I was talking about before, because I think an interesting thing to consider is when we were talking about action movies versus like real, good, what the critics would say the best movies of the year, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a big distinction there, and it's based mostly on the actual content of the film, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's not a lot of depth to the characters in action movies, yada yada. The writing's not as good. Here we go, right? In games, I think of Uncharted, which is literally an action movie. It's actually based on Indiana Jones, right, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it is a super action movie. And that is, every year that it comes out, it's on Game of the Year list. Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting to compare the two and say, action movie. In games, it's super important. So is that a criticism of storytelling in games in general? Huh. Or are those action movies given more time to breathe because they're 10 hours instead of an hour and a half, so you get to know the characters more and they're actually better stories?
All right, well, that's a fair point.
But what's I don't know which one is right, because it could just be, hey, there aren't a lot of great stories in games.
That could be it too. When we think about this, we think of the history of games, right? I mean, when we talk about our favorite games, the fact that our lists are very, very comparable, maybe that, and we have the same likes and we have the same interests, maybe that just shows maybe a good game and a good story in game is very, very far and few between. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's why we can talk about games and, you know, oh, Dan, you would like this game, let's play it. Oh, dude, I love that game. Yeah, I knew you would. You know, maybe it's just like gaming in general. And not to say that there isn't a lot of great games with great stories, but when you look at the whole market, maybe storytelling isn't as... The games that we play for story and are profound to us, but maybe as a whole...
What I will say is that games are moving in the direction of open world, right? A lot of open world games. You know, like Shadow of War came out this year.
Oh, even Legend of Zelda too. Sort of.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, open worlds are huge right now. You have GTA, you had Watch Dogs 2 last year, you have Ghost Recon earlier this year. They're all in the same open world sandbox, like, here's what kind of games they are. I'm sure within those games, there are good stories. But if it's uneven, it's harder to get through the parts that are not interesting. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about, that's why we play a lot of shorter games that are story heavy, because they're very good throughout, because they don't stick around too long. You know? I think of, did you play Alien Isolation?
Oh yeah, I loved it, yeah.
Stuck around for an extra 12 hours, that made it a worse game.
Oh really? I love the Alien Isolation.
But the beginning, the part of that game that was awesome is it felt like you were
in the movie.
You were in the movie. The set design was incredible. You're talking about being stalked by the alien. Yeah. But then when it keeps happening and it keeps killing you over and over and the game just goes on and on, it's like, it detracted from it hugely. If that was an 8-hour game, it would be one of my favorite games. But it was like 20 hours. Maybe
that's just with games in general. Sometimes maybe it's content versus quality, you know?
But it has to maintain throughout. That's why I think NieR right now is one of my favorite games of the year so far. And it's maintained... It's gotten more interesting as the game has gone on, and it's gotten better.
Okay.
And mechanically, it's changed. So it's like it's not that long games aren't as interesting. It's that you need some variation and or some excellent storytelling in order to, maintain a full interest in that game.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking of? Going back to like what we were talking about with movies versus games. There are a lot of movies that I like for their style, not because they're a good story.
Okay.
I think the movie Drive.
I love Drive, yeah. I feel like every time you say something, I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. Oh, I love that too. Yeah, it's just like...
You're very agreeable. But Drive is all style, not a lot of substance.
It's just action.
But that is what it's going for, and it's great at it. I think of games like Bastion that are... so stylish, and the story has some intrigue, just like Drive has some intrigue. Or like, I really like John Wick.
Okay.
John Wick is an incredible movie, and it is super stylish. There's no plot, but what there is intrigue in the world. So when I don't know, you haven't seen John Wick?
I haven't seen John Wick, no.
He goes to this hotel that is like 4 assassins. And it makes you like think about the world that they're in, and like this is like some like weird like dystopian world. It makes you think about it. It doesn't then say we're gonna explain to you the origins of this hotel and how the assassins became like, they're basically like superheroes in this world. And it's like, no, we're not doing that, because a lot of times what's left unsaid is what's interesting. And that's why we like a lot of the movies that we like Blade Runner and stuff like that. We said Blade Runner, do a shot at home, because we always talk about Blade Runner. But I think games do that a lot. But what games don't do a lot is tell the good story.
Yeah.
They know how to do the tone and the intrigue. I think Bastion is a masterclass in that.
Definitely.
It has the tone and the style, and it has some interesting questions of like, what happened to the world before?
But it's never answered.
And that's okay. I'm all right with that in a story, even a good story. But if you take the plot of Bastion and write it down, not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it has the style, and it's because it has the intrigue that you like that. So I just wanted to throw that in as like an interesting way of thinking about what we like about movies versus games, because we talked a lot about stories and games and stuff like that, and I just wanted to say, I think there's where I say The Last of Us is all plot, no nuance. Wolfenstein is both. I think there are games that are just style and nuance.
Well, I think, would you agree that Cuphead was like that?
Cuphead was like that, but Cuphead is different because Cuphead is like all gameplay, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about the stories in the game. Like, Cuphead purposefully does not have a story. Just like the old Mario games purposefully don't really have a story. It's like, what are you doing in Super Mario World, which is, one of our favorite games ever? What are you doing in it? Getting to the end of a level, and they're saying princess.
Yeah.
But that's there's no story.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't need the good story to be a good game.
True.
But if you don't have a good story, you better be really good at the gameplay.
And that's fair.
It's Mega Man.
Right,
Mega Man
you're right, yeah. Because when you think of our favorite games that are purely based on gameplay alone, like I said, Mega Man, Mario, any of those games, Contra, any of those games, you're right. It's the gameplay alone.
And Cuphead falls into that vein. But what those games do is they have the gameplay, and then they have other things that make you love them. Whether it's the secrets in Super Mario World and the graphics and the art style and the music. If it was just gameplay, it would still be great. It wouldn't be one of our favorite games ever. If you're looking at Cuphead, it's the art style,
right, of
it's
course.
The music, it's that totally unique, incredible hand-drawn art. If you just had the gameplay of Cuphead, still enjoyable, not the same game. So that's why I'm saying, I think what Destiny does right is it has the gameplay. And it has the social links to say, hey, you're going to play with your friends, and the gameplay's fun enough that you talking to your friends over the story is why you're here. You're not here for the story to listen to your friends. If you are, go with God, but that story is no bueno. But basically what I'm getting at is Destiny has the gameplay, and it has some interesting things, but it doesn't have the hook that a game like Cuphead has.
Right.
Where Cuphead has the gameplay, and it has something that makes you love it.
The way I'm feeling it right now, I feel like it's some sort of like pendulum. You know what I mean? Like it's either it swings to amazing story or swings to amazing gameplay, graphics, music, whatever. And it feels like Destiny just kind of falls right in the.
Well, not necessarily. I think what I get where you're coming from with that, but what I'm saying actually is, if you're on the spectrum of gameplay, if your gameplay's up here, but everything else is here, your average is here. With Cuphead, his gameplay is up here. It has more interesting things like the music and the art style, which averages it out to be better.
Okay.
Where Destiny just has the gameplay
and nothing else.
For me, some people might like the sci-fi story in it.
Right.
And I will say, that world, that universe, is very cool. It's good looking. But it doesn't have the hooks, If it was the same gameplay and it had like some story beats of like Prey or something like that, I would never stop playing it.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like I want, it's like everything in me wants to love Destiny, but it's just not a lovable game.
And that's fair. And you know what? I totally. I didn't play Destiny 2. I played the first Destiny, and I thought it was beautiful. I thought the gameplay was great. And after 10 hours of doing the same thing over and over again, wasn't playing any multiplayer, just by myself, didn't pick it up. Destiny 2 came out. I said, nah, not for me. Not,
I think you're
not
safe to pass on that.
That's something that I.
But lots of people got a ton of enjoyment out of it.
Listen, I know people that have legit played thousands of hours of Destiny, like thousands and thousands of hours, and they swear by it, and they say this is the best game we ever played. And that's totally cool. You know, definitely go for it. More power to you.
The crux of what I wanted to talk about was the enjoyment versus the criticism. And I think if I'm being fair to Destiny, I say I enjoyed it while I played it. And if I were to criticize it while I was playing it, I would say it's a very good game. The lasting appeal and the fact that it did not stick in my brain for 1 second after I put the controller down, it says all that needs to be said. You know, these games, the games that I love, stick around. I'm talking about, I played Breath of the Wild in March. It's still one of my favorite games of the year. It's one of my favorite Zelda games ever. And I think about it all the time. Yeah.
Well, see, I'd be curious, because before you were looking at, your games of the year since 2007, I'm curious how many games on that list still stick in your brain, or I wonder,
Well, that when we do that list, we'll talk about that, because those games were picked in 2017. Those games I did not go back and do in 2007, read up my top 10 games of the year. So the games that are my top 10 of 2007 are games that stuck in my brain. Otherwise, they wouldn't be written down.
Gotcha.
If I wrote a list in 2007, I can guarantee.
I thought it was. I thought that's what it did. Okay, yeah.
That would be great if I could.
Like I said, I wonder. I just wonder when we talk about lasting power. It's interesting to look. It's even when we talk about Mario Odyssey, and we're going to be like, oh well, where does it fit on the Mario games? I wonder 10 years from now if we still feel as, you know what I mean? It's just all hindsight, because we'll never, really know. But
hey, I'll be the first one to tell you. Back in the day, some of my favorite games during those times, I have no love for anymore. Yeah. The original Assassin's Creed, I adored, which is insane because nobody liked that one. They all liked 2. I love the original Assassin's Creed, and as the years went on, I said, "Why the hell did I even like that? It sucks." I started to play 2. I was like, I don't like this game at all. And I know everyone out there loves Assassin's Creed 2, but so sorry.
But it's interesting, and I don't know. I don't think we have an answer on it, because we're human beings and we're emotional creatures, and I think we just kind of we like what we like, and what can I say?
All right. Well, on that beautiful note, you're a poet. I think we're gonna call it an episode here. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll catch you next week. Peace. What's up, guys? It's Dan from Circle Back. I'm just here to let you know you can find everything that we do at circlebackgaming.com. If you just want the podcast, we're on iTunes. If you just want the video, we're on YouTube. So catch us either place. Thanks.